So this is a video for my ancient culture class. This is the humanistic presentation. We're supposed to analyze a cultural product. I wanted to do a book. This this is not like the book I read. This is a big scary book, but this is a collection. This is the Norton Anthology of World Masterpieces, and it has a lot of ancient texts in it. Specifically, the one I chose was Candide by Voltaire. I'm going to talk about what I learned from it, what it means, what it's for, things.
It's a story old as time. Write a line that doesn't rhyme and resign to being nothing more than adequate.
So, the main character of this story is named Candide. Candide lives in Westphalia, which is in Germany, and he's just like a happy, naive little baby main character, and he's in love with the princess that lives in the castle he lives in, and he looks up to the philosopher teacher guy who also lives in the castle and just rants to him about philosophy. His love interest's name is Cunegonde, and his professor's name is Pangloss. And he starts like happy and in love, but then he gets involved with his love interest like one time, and instantly the Baron kicks him out. He's just shunned completely. He leaves, and right now there's a war going on between the Bulgars, which are Bulgarians, I guess, and the Avar. And the Bulgars just pick him up and make him a soldier, and he fights for them for a while, and he's miserable. And they beat him up a lot. And it just kind of devolves from there. he realizes that his home, his castle, is completely destroyed by the war. He sees other towns that are just completely destroyed by the war. He meets people that tell him his friends are dead. And then he meets his friends again because they're alive, apparently. And he travels all these different places, and everywhere he goes, it's terrible. And everywhere he goes, he's running into his friends, he's bringing people with him. And they just keep dying and reviving a lot. And a lot of people get really injured, really severely injured, and, raped. And they go to war, and they get shunned by almost every place they go to. He's having like the most miserable time. But the important thing about that is Pangloss, his mentor, uh, his philosophy that he always taught Candide was that this world is the best possible world of all worlds, and it's the only, like, this is the only thing possible, and therefore it's for the best. So Candide goes through all these terrible things, and the whole time he's thinking about what Pangloss said. Surely it must be for the best, and every time things aren't going his way, he's like, oh, Pangloss must have been wrong. Everything's so sad and I'm miserable. And then one thing goes right, and he's like, actually, maybe things are for the best. This is this is the thing that he does over and over again. He goes to El Dorado, which isn't real. It's the myth of a land of gold and everyone's rich. And they give him so much money, but he leaves anyways because his entire pursuit is to be with Cunegonde again. That's the one thing keeping him going. He just wants to meet up with Cunegonde and be happy. And he takes all his gold. And it's almost as soon as he leaves, he loses so much. He, at the end, by the time he reaches Cunegonde again, he is so poor. He can't have anything nice. The whole time, he's just thinking about philosophy. Oh, maybe it's for the best, actually. and they run into so many historical events. This book references an obscene amount of historical things. This was written in the 18th century, of course, so a lot of them are 18th century. Basically, every bad thing you can think of. Also, a lot of plays and a lot of famous books like Homer and Aeneid and Cicero. And so, I think the main thing about this plot is the tension between how ridiculous everything bad that's happening to Candide is versus um, what he's supposed to think about it, and what his mentor Pangloss said. This is definitely a tragedy as in where everything starts out great and by the end they lose everything. The ending actually is the kind of most famous and most important part. So Candide meets with basically every friend he made through the whole book. They're all just alive after being completely massacred over and over again. They all show up somehow here. They show up together, and because they're poor now, they start a farm together. This is all they have is they live on the farm. And everyone has just lost everything, including for some reason Kunigond is really ugly now. I guess they're saying, this is what Candide has been searching for the whole book, and now he's lost it as well. And is Kunigond's beauty, and it's gone. But they're married anyways because he feels obligated. So they live on the farm, and they're all miserable. And they hear about like the best philosopher in the land. Okay, and they go to him because they're like, surely he'll answer our philosophical debates that we're constantly having. And this, it's the best philosopher in Turkey, and he says, what does it matter if there's good and evil? And he slams the door in their face. He hates their questions. He thinks they're stupid. And they just go back to their farm like, oh well, I guess we can't know. The famous quote from the very end of the book is, we must cultivate our garden. Um, and that's what they do. They just do their farm thing forever. After all those tragedies, after all the debates, they just say, you know what? Let's just do this farm thing. We must cultivate our garden, and that's kind of the pertinent point of the book.
Hey, little hummingbird, won't you give me a sign that there's still life in you?
We're gonna do a thing where we trace Candide's path, his journey through the book, because it's insane. And I think I learned the names of more places in 2 days than I ever have in my whole life. Can you see this? This is his path, all right? Like I said, we're starting in Westphalia, so Bulgaria, Holland, boats to Lisbon. Then he goes to somewhere called Avicena. I don't know where that is, and I couldn't figure it out. Um, but then he goes to, Cadiz, which is still in that area in Lisbon, in Portugal. Then he boats to Buenos Aires. Notice this one's all the way down here. He's in South America now, and he's going to travel up through South America. And he goes to Paraguay first, and after that is wherever big lugs live. I don't know what that is, but they're made out to be some sort of native. And then he finds El Dorado. Obviously, I don't know where El Dorado is on the map. I think it's somewhere in Brazil, because after that he passes up through Suriname, which is above Brazil. This map thing is really difficult, but from Suriname, he spends like $50 gazillion just to sail to France. He gets scammed so much because remember that money from El Dorado? It's just washing down the drain. He gambles so much of it away. It's bad. Bordeaux specifically. Then Paris. And then he sails to England, specifically Portsmouth, and then he sails to Venice. And see, okay, now he goes to Constantinople. Now it's Istanbul, not Constantinople. It's been a long time going to Constantinople. That's nobody's business but the Turks. Now, see, for the fact that after Venice, he goes to Propontis. Guys, I can't find a Propontis. I don't know where that is, but that's where his farm is, I think. So we're gonna say he ends it in Constantinople, and they like become Turks, I guess. I want to say something about this map that's really interesting. It's a cultural signifier that I don't think Voltaire intended when he was writing the book. He based these locations off his own experience and what he's read. Notice this, especially Europe. Okay, the thing about it is, imagine you're a Frenchman in the 1700s, and you're trying to make a point about the entirety of humanity in the whole world by writing your book. He intends that this is the whole world. He says multiple times, the main character, I've been all around the world, the entire world, and everywhere is miserable in the whole world. The whole world? You mean Europe, and like a brief pass through South America. You know, at this time, France and England are fighting over Canada. America's like a bunch of forests, I think. Asia doesn't count. Africa just doesn't count. Russia, who's that? This is the 1700s French man's world. This is where he lives. This is all he knows, and I think that's pretty interesting. Something to think about. This is excluding the old lady's path. By the way, there's an old lady, and she's supposedly like the most miserable person. She tells a story about everywhere she's been. Um, it's just as long a path. But I can confirm, maybe besides Morocco, it's pretty much the same. This is his whole world. Think about that. And I just wonder about that. Want to see the map closer? Here. The whole world according to a Frenchman in the 1700s. Wow. See, when I was reading the book, one of the first things I thought of doing was making a map because I was like, where are all these places? I have no idea what they are. But it's also interesting to think about the fact that I assure you, Voltaire trashes on every single one of these places except for El Dorado, which doesn't exist. You can see where he's going with that. Reminder, this book is about optimism. He kind of smeared the entirety of Europe, though. That's kind of rough, man. But
Sing that ancient tune.
I want to talk about the philosophy of this book because this guy is a philosopher. He writes a lot of different kinds of things, but I'm a philosophy student. The most interesting thing to me is the philosophy. I want to talk about it. So this book is a smear against deterministic optimism. The book itself has this pre-section. It's kind of useful for giving me context. Uh, the way that this first section of the book portrays it is very strange. The guy who made optimism that he's referring to at this time is Leibniz. Leibniz is another philosopher. He's beefing with him, and the book goes so far as to say that Candide strawmans deterministic optimism. They list Leibniz's philosophy as, like the Pope's, it implies a belief in an unknowable universal order roughly equivalent to Christian providence, but no lack of awareness about the actual misery and depravity of a human being's experience. And the strawman they accuse Candide of portraying is that everything is for the best in all possible worlds, and that this is like the best world ever. So they're accusing Candide of saying that Leibniz is ignorant to human suffering. And I can see how that would be an interpretation you could take because Candide basically, to fight deterministic optimism, you could think that Voltaire is just throwing every tragedy at the wall because there are so many historical events in here that were actually tragedies, and he just like shoves them in your face, and then Candide suffers, all his friends suffer, they all die. And you could say, oh well, his point against deterministic optimism is that, look guys, people do suffer, you can't be optimistic, you can't be happy about it. But I don't think the point is that they're suffering. I think the point is that when they're suffering, they stop to philosophize about it. I don't think that Candide was trying to say optimism is wrong because people suffer, you know? It, that seems unfair. He made the Turkey's best philosopher say, what does it matter if there's good or evil? And a lot of people think about the "we need to cultivate our garden" quote as well. And those to me just both seem like optimism is a cope. All you need to do is work. Direct quote from the text. Let's work without speculating, said Martin. It's the only way of rendering life bearable. Maybe Candide is trying to say that optimism fails. It's not a good cope. It's not helpful when you suffer through hardship. An important context of this as well is that this is written during the Enlightenment. This is the heart of the Enlightenment, when everybody was trying to say that we should turn to reason and things. The, Voltaire is very in support of that idea that's developing at this point. It's kind of a jab against romanticism. You can't just be happy because you think this is the best world. You have to work whether you're happy or not. It doesn't matter. This is the practical way of doing things. This is the reasonable Enlightenment style answer. We must cultivate our garden. Who cares if you're living a nice romance life with your beautiful mistress, or you're on a farm with all your friends that hate each other and argue constantly? You have to work either way. I am very interested in optimism and determinism myself because, guys, I'm famous for determinism. Everybody knows that about me now. I am a determinist, so this was a very interesting thing for me to engage with. I never encountered optimistic determinism. I'm very skeptical about the possible worlds thing. Like, this is the best of all possible worlds. That doesn't seem like it should be an argument, because under determinism there is only one world and there could only be one world. So yes, this is the best of possible worlds, but also at the same time it's the worst of possible worlds, and it's also the most mid of possible worlds. But I consider myself an optimist, because the most logical thing to do is to just be happy and work anyways, which is kind of a fusion of what Voltaire and Leibniz say. But that's the thing is, I think their ideas are compatible, and I don't think they need to fight about it. You can have determinism and you can have optimism, but you can also have Voltaire's pursuit of knowledge. Notice unknowable. This is an unknowable belief in the state of the world. Unknowable universal order. I don't think it's an unknowable universal order. That's a very poor claim if you're trying to support determinism. It's less like it's less like there's an unknowable universal order and more like the universal order is unknown. And if you go around saying it's unknowable, that's an automatic discouragement of people from trying to figure out the order of the world, because they'll think it's futile, right? And that does clash with optimism, though, doesn't it? You'll never know how everything works. And so you should just be happy and dumb. And, it's kind of what it feels like they're saying. I know that's not the intent. I know it's more. Stop stressing, guys. It's fine. Either way. So maybe that's what Voltaire got upset about and what rubbed him the wrong way. The pursuit of understanding is very much, the pursuit of logical reasoning, and that's what the Enlightenment's all about. So maybe to say there's an unknowable universal order, it was a slap in the face to Enlightenment thinkers at the time, like Voltaire. It kind of just said, "Oh, your reasoning, it's fine. It doesn't matter that much." And I can see the argument for how Voltaire is straw manning. It's kind of inevitable, though, guys. Straw mans happen all the time by accident. I'm probably doing it right now. My final take is that optimism is compatible with determinism, but not Leibniz's determinism. A determinism that Voltaire would like more. One that is based on logical reasoning and the possibility of explaining everything. And at the same time, you should just be happy and work on your garden anyways. What Leibniz was trying to do was oh yeah, Leibniz, well, if reasoning isn't as important as being happy, then uh, working is more important than being happy. So there.
Throw that feeling to the wind. Push your head under the sand. Did you really think you're any more than adequate?
So there's actually a lot of important history and context for this book, but I know it's weird I'm putting it at the end. I just think it's more important to engage with the ideas first than to judge the person that wrote it and the context they wrote it in. So Voltaire was a Frenchman born in 1694. He was a middle-class Parisian, and he attended a Jesuit school. This makes a lot of sense to me because the amount of times he mentions the Jesuits in this book is insane. I can't go a chapter without seeing a Jesuit. The crazy thing about him though was he was such a town crier. He debated so many people. He wrote so many smear campaigns against the government that they jailed him multiple times. At a certain point, they just exiled him to England for 3 years, all because he just kept trashing on the government. And in the 17th century, you don't do that. It's not a thing you do. You don't just get to write disses about your French government and expect to be fine. At one point, he just randomly got rich by predicting something about the economy. I can't remember, but in my mind, I equate it to him getting rich off of stocks. So, when he's writing this book about someone who gets rich and still isn't happy and also loses all his money, I think that he's writing from a place of experience of getting rich and then not. That it feels like nothing changes to him. So, a lot of the places he writes, there are actually things in their historical events he puts in that he was attending or that he was completely involved in because he was very politically active. Note how he got jailed for politics multiple times. Things like trying to stop executions. There's an execution in this book that Voltaire was actually at and tried to stop. So he's saying, "Look, I was there. It was bad. It's miserable." And you can see that reflected in Candide's character when he encounters the execution. He reacts with, "See, wow, oh my gosh. As soon as I get here, there's an execution. Everything's bad. Maybe Pangloss was wrong, guys. Maybe he's wrong. Maybe everything isn't for the best." This book is his magnum opus, and it was written later in life, after a lot of experience writing other things. And it's kind of a reflection of, so what do you think about life? How can anyone be happy or sad about it. What are we meant to do? It's a very purpose based book. It's a very how do I react to life book. To quote Victor Hugo, to mention Voltaire is to characterize the entire 18th century. This is the Enlightenment. Voltaire is an Enlightenment thinker. He pushes reason. And so, what this book is trying to do is reason through how you react to life, what you can do about things, what your goals should be for your mood, for your happiness, and also to reason through someone else's argument. Leibniz, it was very common at this time to go back and forth, philosophical debates. This has been happening since, like Greek philosophers. And it's fair to say that most of Voltaire's work was in reaction to someone else saying something he didn't like. Every time the government did something he thought was unjust, he'd write about it and they'd throw him in jail. Every time a philosopher said something he thought was dumb, he wrote about it. And sometimes he got praised and sometimes he got trashed, and he had a lot of fights with people. The footnotes in this book mentioned at least three of these characters that were actual historical figures that showed up were people that Voltaire had beef with, that he had been fighting with, and he put them in the book as characters. But maybe this book is saying at the end of his life that maybe I shouldn't, maybe I shouldn't be fighting with all these people. Maybe I should just cultivate my garden. Guys, maybe we should just cultivate our garden. What is the garden a metaphor for? What is the garden a metaphor of? All work? Life? Maybe I should just cultivate my garden. What does it matter if there's good or evil? I think that's an audacious thing to say in any other time period before the 18th century. What does it matter if there's good or evil? Up to this point, there have been so many religions, especially, that were very dualistic. Good versus evil, guys. Good versus evil. But to say, what does it matter if there's good or evil? That is the audacity of an Enlightenment thinker. I don't care if there's good or evil. I'm gonna try and write about the logic of the world. How do people think? How do I think? How does anything happen? Why does it happen? This was the shift in questioning of the time. It doesn't matter. Cultivate your garden. Just be content with reason. Be content with the pursuit of knowledge. Don't keep your head in the clouds. What's the best way to plant my crops? We should cultivate our garden. Bye guys. I'm gonna go cultivate my garden. This book made me feel. This book made me feel historically educated. And I've decided deterministic optimism needs a new definition. I don't think it should be tied to theology, but it's interesting that it was at this point. The 1700s is definitely still when you're not supposed to say anything about God not existing. That's not really on the table at this point. Maybe a little bit, but it's kind of heretical and they might kick you out. And, he's just right. You should just continue to do your duty. You'll find purpose and happiness on the road to duty. Cultivate your garden.
Hummingbirds say the word and I can pull the plug on you. Hummingbirds say the word, I could pull the rug from under you. and so dug far into you.
What's the best way to plant my crops?